Is it okay to start? I know I'm very happy and feel quite joyful that people are just really looking after me here. Even little things like making sure the seat is a bit more comfortable. And they were asking what else they can do. As I was mentioning yesterday, what you could do, I mean, you're a tech entrepreneur, or Rohita, or that's where you started off. Why can't we have a high-tech cushion here? So if I get a bit sore, it's a bit soft in one corner, I can press a little button and it can lift up the back. And if I get a sore knee, you can lift up that part. If I'm giving a long talk, I can press another button, you can have a massage. And if I give a very boring talk, you can press another button and it ejects me. Would that be a good idea? I mean, honestly, you don't want to say yes because you don't want to upset me, but you won't. One of the nice things of being a monk, from my background, is that I honestly really do respect feedback and respect, to get some of your comments about what I say. And sometimes I say these things, number one, to make it interesting, but also to have a point to it. And much of those points in these early talks on this retreat is to enhance your practice of meditation. And also, for Venerable Dhamma, I have a lot of compassion for him. He's just arrived. So I've got to say nice things about him now. I was saying nice things about you earlier as well. But it's very hard to take translations. And number two, it's very almost important that I give a nice presentation so that he can understand. I don't think he's going to sit on here now. Please sit down there because you can hear me better. Oh, it's not Dhammata. Oh, yeah, sorry. Who's taking the translation today? You are? Okay, yeah, good. So, anyway, to make it clear, can you hear okay? Good, excellent. Because apparently yesterday sitting on there, the sound quality, what he was hearing wasn't that good. Because of location, nothing else. So I'm very happy you can sit over there and relax. But anyway, to start today's talk, it's a story I'd forgotten about for quite a few years, but which I use very often, and it's something you can remember very easily, and also it has a beautiful message. It's a story that old monks don't lie. If you can remember that story, it began when there was a very old monk who was on Charika here in Sri Lanka. And he was wandering from place to place, carrying any possession he had with him. And one day he came to a farmhouse. And the farmer was a very good man, but extremely poor, but nevertheless gave the monk some food. And then the farmer got a little bit impressed by this monk. So the farmer went on his knees, worshipped the monk, and said, "Venerable sir, have you got a place to stay for the upcoming rains retreat, the Wasa?" And the old monk said, "Actually, no." And then the farmer put his hand up, "Oh, please, Venerable sir, out of compassion, stay close to my farmhouse. A short distance away, there's a little old hut. I can renovate it for you. It won't take me that long. And once I've renovated it, there's a beautiful river close by, enough water for you to bathe in, to wash your robes. And my wife and I will supply you with all of your food and anything else you need for the was period. So he looked at the farmer, and out of compassion, the old monk said yes. And so the farmer built or renovated this old hut close to the river. Even though the farmer was quite poor, in truth, it does not cost that much to look after a good monk. In fact, I remember going to a conference, a Buddhist conference in New Zealand a few years ago. And one of the people I recognized there was a gentleman called Colin Ash. He was a Buddhist from UK. And he was also a lecturer in economics at Reading University and on the board of the Bank of England. So he was a top-notch economist. And he decided to give a paper on the economic benefit, just pure economics, of looking after monks. First of all, he worked out how much it cost to look after a monk. The same with a nun too. But to look after a monk or a nun, they just need a simple hut, very, very cheap. And the food the monks eat, just very simple, and they don't ask for very much. And so he actually worked out, please don't get offended, that the cost of looking after a monk is actually cheaper than having a pet dog. And there's many similarities. Many of the monks eat out of a bowl, so do dogs. Many of the monks live in small huts. What do dogs live in? Small kennels. Many of the owners of pet dogs, they take their dog out for a walk in the morning. That's what monks do in the morning, go for alms round when they're not on retreat in a nice hotel. There are so many similarities. And the advantage of monks over dogs is that we don't give like compassion like dogs give compassion, always licking you and always making sure you're okay. Actually, we do, don't we? We give our compassion and our advice in other ways. And when he came to the conclusion that monks are so financially easy to look after, and they don't cause any problem, they give so much benefits for the family looking after them, he ended up by saying that really every home should have one. A good monk or nun, nice little hut in the back to look after them. Do you agree? Okay, we'll see what happens afterwards. But anyway, so this farmer made a beautiful renovations to this old hut, and the monk would go to the house every morning, and in the morning the wife and the farmer would offer him food, and the two children will be there, and the dog as well. The dog is a very important part of this story. And they would always respect the monk, and the monk in return would give Dhamma instructions to the children, talk about meditation to the farmer and his wife, and they grew so much in the Dhamma. And after the end of the rains retreat, the old monk came and said, "Today is the Mahapavarana day. Tomorrow I will have to leave. The rains retreat is over." And when the monk said that, the dog put his tail between the legs and started whining. The two children started crying, and even the wife started sobbing, and the farmer pleaded, "Oh, please, Venerable, don't go." And the old monk said, "Like, I have to go." But Out of compassion, out of gratitude, I want to tell you that my meditation was very deep this retreat. And in the meditation, I managed to find, with my mind, that not far away, closer than you think, is a huge buried treasure. It's amazing when you say that to lay people, that they stop crying. Really? He said, yes, and I really want you to have it. You deserve it. You've looked after me so well. But if you're going to find this buried treasure, you have to listen very carefully and follow my instructions perfectly. So said the monk, tomorrow morning, or any morning, I want you to stand at the threshold, the doorway of your little house. And I want you to wait until dawn. And when the sun starts to rise above the horizon, take the bow and arrow which you use to keep wild animals from destroying your crops. Take your bow and arrow and then point the bow and arrow in the direction of the rising sun. And as the orb of the sun separates from the horizon, then let the arrow fly. And where the arrow falls, you will find the treasure, enough that you can live a happy retirement. Did you hear that, Venerable Dhamma? Make sure that you say that perfectly, because if you miss any instruction there, it can never work. So I'll say the instructions again. At dawn, stand at the threshold of the house, the doorway, and pick up the bow and arrow, and point the bow and arrow in the direction of the rising sun. And when the sun rises, let the arrow fly. And where it falls, you will find the treasure. And the people were so excited. They knew they were going to be rich. They knew that old monks don't lie. And so they hardly slept the next night. And they were up really early in the morning. And they had the bow and arrow ready. They waited for the sun to rise. And as the sun was rising, got out the bow and arrow. He pointed the bow and arrow in the direction of the rising sun. And when the sun actually rose above the horizon, he shot that arrow. It went so far, and they all ran after it, including the children, the dog, and the wife, and him, obviously. And where the arrow fell, she gave the spade to his wife and told his wife to dig a big hole. That's really misogynist. You shouldn't do that to your dear wife. Tell her to do the work. Do you agree with that? Anyway, if you treat a wife like that, you will find you have consequences coming later, and you'll soon hear them. So she dug and dug and dug, and what did she find? Nothing, only trouble. Because that arrow fell in land belonging to a lawyer. And the lawyer was just walking for exercise, and he saw this woman destroying his land, and he said, "Stop, I will sue you. I will take everything you own. You can't do that to other people's property." And the wife said, "It's not my fault. My husband told me to do that." And the husband said, "Not my fault. This old monk said we'd find a treasure here." And at that the lawyer said, That's really strange. Because he was a Buddhist too, the lawyer was a Buddhist. And he said, old monks don't lie. There must be something strange here. What did he tell you? So the farmer told the instructions. And the lawyer said, look, you're just a simple farmer. You've got no real strength. I'll tell you what, I won't sue you if you agree that tomorrow we'll try again and I will shoot the arrow and we'll split any treasure we find. We split it 51%, 49%, less my costs and inconveniences. Are there any lawyers here? And they had to sign a contract. That's how lawyers work. I don't want to offend any lawyers, otherwise I might get in trouble. So anyway, they signed a contract, and tomorrow the lawyer was at the threshold of the house. He shot the arrow. It went much further, and they all ran after it, including the dog again. And this time, the lawyer gave the spade to the husband. Now he had to do the work. It was called the law of karma, you know. And so he had to do all the hard work. And then who came along this time? Who came along was a general in the army. And the general in the army said, you can't destroy this field, this belongs to me. And the general had all his soldiers with him and said, right, cut off his head. And that's when the farmer said, it's not my fault. The lawyer told me to dig this hole. And the lawyer said, it's because, yesterday I found this wife telling me to dig a hole or saying to dig it here. And why? And he said, because I was told by an old monk they will find a treasure here. And then the general in the army said, I'm a Buddhist too. Please don't tell me why generals are Buddhists when they want to cut off people's heads just like that. But anyway, that was part of the story as I heard it. So he said, wait, I'm a Buddhist. Old monks don't lie. What did that monk tell you? And when they repeated the instructions of this old monk, the general said, oh, look, it's obvious. No, you're lay people. What do lay people know about archery? You have to be a trained general in the army. I know how to shoot an arrow. Tomorrow, that I will go there and shoot the arrow for you. And we'll divide the proceeds 3 ways evenly. That's one for the farmer, 2 for the lawyer, and 3 for the general. That's what the general thought even meant. But nevertheless, he was there the next morning, and as the sun rose, he followed the instructions as he thought they were, and he shot that arrow in the direction of the rising sun. It went so much further. And all of them, including the lawyer, ran after it. This is also a nice story to test your patience. The Buddha once said, Kanti paramanta bodhitika. But it has a good ending coming soon. And so the king shot the arrow, the general shot the arrow. And it went so far when they all ran after it, where it fell. This time it was the lawyer's job to dig the hole. And the lawyer was digging that hole and digging the lawyer's job. Digging and digging and digging. And what do you think he found? Nothing, only more trouble. This time, big trouble. Because that arrow now fell in the garden belonging to His Majesty the King. And the king arrested all of them, including that dog. And they said to them, you should know, especially you, general, one of my best generals, to destroy royal property is a capital offense. I'll have to execute the lot of you, including the dog. and the poor dog started whining, and the family of poor farmers started crying, as did the children, and the lawyer was trying to find some other lawyer to represent him to put a stay on the execution. But anyway, the king said, "Why did you do that?" And that's when they said, "Because an old monk said where this arrow fell, and that happened to be in your garden, we'll find a huge treasure." And that's when the king said, "An old monk said that?" "Yes, your majesty." And the king replied, "I'm a Buddhist." And again, I think monks, we need to even tell kings and sultans to make sure that they keep their precepts. But anyway, the king said, "What exactly did he say?" "Stand at the threshold of the house in the morning, take up a bow and arrow, point the bow and arrow in the direction of the rising sun, and as the orb of the sun separates from the horizon, then let the arrow fly." And the king said, "This is strange, because old monks don't lie." So the king said, "I will put you in the prison for a few days till I find that monk. When I find him, I can investigate why he got you into such trouble." And so they put a lot of them in jail. In fact, even being in jail was not that bad, especially for the dog. The dog had much better food than he had at the farmhouse, and even the kids could play around without getting into any more trouble. And it only took a few days to find that monk, and when they did find him, they brought him in front of the king and all the others involved. And the king said, "Venerable sir, why have you got all of these people into such trouble? I'm surprised at you. You're an honorable monk, and old monks don't lie. Why?" And that's when the old monk replied, "Because, Your Highness, none of them followed the instructions." And at that, the king said, "What do you mean? I heard the instructions. I can't see what they did wrong." And the old monk said, "Your Majesty, may I invite you to that poor farmhouse tomorrow morning? May I ask you to follow those instructions? And where the arrow falls, you will find a great treasure. I promise, I'm an old monk, I don't lie." And the king trusted that old monk. How many of you have heard this before and know the answer? You put your hand up? Only two. Oh, that's good, that's not bad. So, the following morning, the king went to that poor house. And together with the general, the lawyer, the farmer, the farmer's wife, the two children, and the dog, and they were all interested in what this monk meant. So the monk said, "Your Majesty, in a few moments the sun will rise. Follow the instructions." So as the sun was rising, His Majesty the King stood at the threshold of the house. As the sun lifted even more, the king picked up the bow and arrow, and he looked at the old monk. The old monk said, "Correct, Your Majesty." And as the sun rose even more, the king pointed the bow and arrow in the direction of the rising sun. And the old monk said, "Correct, Your Majesty." And as the sun was rising, not yet fully risen above the horizon, the king pulled the arrow back and looked at the monk. He said, "Well, I never said that, but that's not wrong." And then the king was about to shoot the arrow when the sun rose, and that's when the old monk said, "Wrong." That was their mistake. I never said, shoot the arrow. I said, let the arrow fly. And the king was very wise. He was holding the arrow in the bow between his thumb and forefinger. And he moved his thumb and forefinger apart. And the arrow flew straight down. And right between the king's feet, they dug a small hole, and there found a huge treasure. So much that even the king could give tax relief to all his subjects. And as for the dog had a 2-story kennel with air condition and even a plunge pool. He could play. But the main reason of the story was that how many times have meditation teachers told you, whatever you're watching, just let it be. Let the arrow fly. Don't force it. Don't strive. Let go. And then where the mind falls, there you will find the greatest treasure of all. Beautiful meditation states, insights and enlightenment. You know that's true. You know why? Because I'm an old monk, and old monks don't lie. So that's the story of old monks don't lie. How many times have you tried to get deep in meditation? How many times has it worked? Is that okay? I love the times in life when this happens. I remember the story of Venerable Ananda. Who's the Buddha's chief disciple. The Buddha was with the Buddha, for 25 years. He learned so much. And you all know the story, that at the end, after the Buddha passed away, Ananda lost all hope for a while. If I can't become enlightened when I have this amazing best teacher, in the world, right next to me, and if I see so many other monks and nuns being affirmed by the Buddha, yes, you are enlightened, but I'm not. And then what happened, to make things worse for Venerable Ananda, the other monks called this meeting in the Satapana cave. 500 arahats they wanted to get to come together to record all the teachings by reciting them, so to preserve the purity of those teachings for generations to come. But then what about Ananda? He wasn't an arahat yet. So they decided to invite him anyway. 499 perfectly enlightened ones, plus the unenlightened Ananda, to kind of understand what it must have felt like. Suppose at the end of this retreat, I make the announcement that every one of you has got these amazing results from your meditation. That you're all arahats except for Venerable Dhamma. How would you feel? Unfair. I've helped so many others and I work so hard. You're all enlightened, I'm not. This is only a simile, by the way, it's not true. And so that's how Ananda must have felt. And so what did Ananda do? He decided, well, let's give it everything I've got. He decided to meditate all night, the night before the big meeting of the first Sanghayana. And so At that first meeting, the night before, Ananda was meditating and meditating and meditating and meditating. And in the morning when the dawn came up, what happened? Venerable Ananda still wasn't enlightened. He'd given everything he had to try and get enlightened. He strived to the max, and he still wasn't enlightened. So what would you do? He thought there's still another hour to go before the meeting, so he decided to take a rest, take a nap. So he went to his room. He'd given up trying to get enlightened. And when, as you all know the story, before his head hit the pillow, he became the 500th Arahat at that meeting. That's how he got enlightened. I call that the Ananda method of meditation. Have you tried that yet? Sometimes I tell people, because I was part of being a theoretical physicist, was being a mathematician, and it meant that you understood probability theory. The more times you try that method, the more likely it is it's going to work. Did you take a rest last night? How many? You can double your odds, double your chances. But the important part of that, why did it work? Why did it work when he let go? He stopped trying. He gave up hope. He gave up thinking this was under his power to make enlightenment. He just let go. I think I already told you in one of the first talks I gave here about how donkeys catch carrots or mangoes put in front of them to make them move forward. That's how this works. As for Ajahn Chah, I mentioned that story of the mangoes on the trees in Wat Pah Pong, planted by the Buddha, which was obvious nonsense. But he said the only way to get one of those mangoes is to sit perfectly still under the mango tree. Put out your hand and do nothing else, and the mango will fall. Not through striving, but through renunciation, letting go, making peace. And if you can do that, the 4 right efforts about learning how to let go, to restrain the mind. You don't make it peaceful, you let it become peaceful by avoiding all the other distractions. And then you find this thing we call peace is a natural position of the mind. If you want to prove that, understand it deeply. When you go outside, have a look at a tree or a bush and look at the leaves on that bush. If those leaves are moving, is it the fault of the bush? Imagine later on when the winds die down, when there's no winds at all, those leaves on the bush continue to move, but less and less and less and less. The friction takes up the energy, and soon those leaves on the tree become perfectly still. Do you have to hold them still? They're still because their stillness is like a natural state. What we call these days the default state. If you leave it alone, it becomes still all by itself. That's the nature of your mind. That's what Ajahn Chah used to say. Let go and be still. It happens naturally. And of course, for those people who still have doubts, there is this beautiful suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya, I think in the tens, where it says that, let's say you are experiencing piti sukha, you don't have to will, you don't have to decide, you don't have to strive. Oh, may I get into a jhana. The jhana happens naturally as a result of that piti sukha. You don't have to strive after the jhanas. Oh, may I see things as they truly are. Yata bhutayana dasana happens as a natural consequence to emerging from the jhanas. What really impressed me with these words of monks like Ajahn Chah, or even the words of the Buddha, was how natural this process was. If you let go, these things happen by themselves. Stillness occurs. And from that stillness, great piti sukhas, enormous mindfulness, the sort of mindfulness which can see deeper. One of the other quotes I wanted to make last night, but was getting too tired and time was going past, was a quote from one of the poets which I used to enjoy when I was a student, William Blake. He was sometime in the 17th century, I think. And I don't know where he got this wisdom from, but when I read this, I could never forget it. It was the first time I heard what sounded like mindfulness properly described. In his saying, William Blake, he said this wonderful 4 lines: to see a world in a grain of sand, see a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. The only reason they use the term hour, because hour rhymed with flower. And also, an hour is usually the time when I give the morning Dhamma talk. But please don't get so bored that you see a whole eternity in an hour when I give a Dhamma talk. Sometimes it might feel like that. But I'm going to go off on a tangent, which I love going off on. What would happen if the talk kept on going on and on and on and on? This is a way of dealing with a boring talk. Once Ajahn Chah was giving one of these talks, really going on and on and on, and on and on and on, and on and on. And in those days, in these monasteries, and even forest monasteries in the northeast, there would always be a few novice monks who were there only because there's nowhere else for them to go. And their family had financial problems or health problems, and so the monasteries would always take them in. And this little novice was listening to one of Ajahn Chah's talks, which was going on and on and on and on. And this little novice said, I'm not here because I want to become enlightened. I'm here because I've got nowhere else to go. When is Ajahn Chah going to stop? When is he going to stop? When is he going to stop? And that became a repetitive mantra inside this poor novice's brain. When is he going to stop? When is he going to stop? When is he going to stop? And then something happens which qualifies as insight, deep insight. Something ordinary, like when is he going to stop, was turned around. And then he started thinking, when am I going to stop? And that's when the little novice stopped. When he opened his eyes after many hours of bliss, it was early in the morning. He'd been sitting there for so many hours. He was not aware of the final, or when that teaching finished. He was not aware of the monks bowing and doing a bit of chanting, a few gathas at the end of the talk. He wasn't aware of them chatting and leaving the hall. He'd been sitting in that hall for hours. Sitting for so long, he missed the alms round, which meant he would miss the meal that day. He didn't mind at all. It's the first time in his life that he got into a very deep meditation, into one of the jhanas. Why? Because he stopped. I always love that word, stop. It's a very powerful word. So much so that whenever I come to places like Sri Lanka, and I see, when I'm being driven around the streets of Colombo, you see all these beautiful shrines to the Lord Buddha, beautiful statues. You can't drive that far in Colombo without seeing something which reminds you of the Dhamma of Buddhism. And sometimes you wonder, in a city like Perth in Australia, how can anybody know that Buddhism is there? And I said, one of the symbols of Buddhism which remind me that Buddhism is very strong in Perth. I see it every major crossroads, the stop sign. So every time I see a stop sign, my hands are free. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Stop. To me, that reminds me of meditation. That's what you're doing. Nothing. Stop. Can you strive to stop? You just stop. When is Ajahn Chah going to stop? Ajahn Chah stopped a long time ago. When are you going to stop? So the next time you meditate, see about that. Stop. Let the arrow of craving fly straight down to the ground. Where it falls, not where you aim it, not where you shoot it at, where it falls, there you'll find this amazing treasure. What is a rich man? A rich man is someone who wants for nothing. Wants for nothing. Otherwise known as arahat. Wanting has stopped. So you want for nothing. Sorry, I was just thinking, when is Ajahn Brahm going to stop? I'll keep going on for a little bit longer, is that okay? Okay, it's just 1:45. One of the other little stories, which I'm going to add on to the end of this talk. You know, many people in a country like Australia, because they're not traditionally Buddhist, they sometimes ask a monk like me, what are you doing this for? You know, for Nibbana? But what is Nibbana? Do you know what Nibbana is? Can you explain it to a friend who's not a Buddhist? And that has been a challenge for so many years. How can you explain to somebody what Nibbana means? Even Buddhists sometimes have weird ideas about what Nibbana is. But one of the beautiful explanations of this, explained in a way which most people can understand easily, but the explanation also carries some amazing insights into the nature of human beings, was the story of the 5 children who were playing the wishing game. The rules of the wishing game are that every child has a wish, and the one who comes up with the best wish will win the wishing game. The first child said, if I had a wish, I would wish for a new computer game, which he loved playing. Fair enough. The second kid said, I can do better than that. If ever there is a challenge game like that, never be the first. There's another story, I'll come back to the wishing game in a moment, when in some foreign country, the monk, the rabbi, and the Christian priest were trying to create bridges together, trying to create some harmony. So they started by having lunch together. But the monk said, look, I can't eat after noon. And so that didn't work out. What about afternoon tea? The monk said, yeah, I can have afternoon tea, but I can't eat any biscuits or anything. What about a morning breakfast? And then the rabbi said, I can't eat anything with pork in it. It got so difficult. So after a while they said, well, maybe what we can do, we can just play games. But playing games, as already mentioned, if Buddhists play soccer, we always lose on purpose out of compassion for others. And so that didn't work, playing those sorts of games. So eventually, something which was very benign, they decided to play cards. And as they were playing cards, what game should we play? So they started to play poker, but then to make it more interesting, they decided to put a few dollars on each game. And basically they were gambling. And then someone found out, and the police came, and they arrested them all. The 3 of them had to go to court, being accused of gambling, which was a very serious crime in that place. And so the judge said, look, I'm surprised at you 3. You've been accused of gambling. So, to make matters short, in the first one, the rabbi said, were you gambling? You're supposed to be an honest rabbi, so please tell the truth. And what the rabbi did was something which I remember, please excuse me, I was taught this when I was young at school. You put your hands behind the back and cross your fingers, then they say it doesn't count. So the rabbi put his hand behind his back, crossed his fingers, and said, no, I wasn't gambling. And so the judge had to release him, said, okay, you can go. And then it was the Christian priest's time in front of the judge. Were you gambling? And keep your hands in front of you. And so quick, incredibly fast, the priest looked up to the heavens and said, Jesus, forgive me. So fast, even the judge didn't notice that, and said, no, I wasn't gambling. And so, okay, you can go too. And so then the judge had the Buddhist monk. And the Buddhist monk can't gaze up into heaven, to ask Jesus to forgive him or anyone to forgive him. And he can't put his hands behind his back. So what's the Buddhist monk going to do? And the judge said, Venerable Sir, were you gambling? And keeping his hands right in front of him, not looking up to the heavens, the Buddhist monk replied, with whom, Your Honor? With whom? You can't be gambling alone. You have to be gambling with someone. And the other one's been proved not to be gambling, so he got off without any problem. It's always the best to be the last to answer the question. Okay. Do you understand that? Okay, some of you do. Anyway, so the 5 kids playing the wishing game. First kid, yeah, I'll have a new computer game. The second girl said, she's much smarter, she said, if I had a wish, I would wish for a computer game shop. With my own shop, I can buy a new computer game whenever I need one. I own the shop. That's obviously a much more superior wish. And the third boy said, no, I can do better than that. For my third wish, I'd wish for, how much? $108 billion US. Is that a lot of money? I don't really know these things because sometimes, I've been out of the financial loop for such a long time. But anyway, I think it's a lot of money. 108 billion, is it? Anyway, he said, the reason I would wish for so much money, the first thing I'd buy my own computer game shop. But the problem is that if I buy my own computer game shop, still my mummy and daddy will not let me play computer games until I finish my homework. So the next thing I buy is my own school. When I own my school, when I am the one who pays the teachers, they wouldn't dare tell my mummy and daddy I haven't done my homework. And I can get in my own school, give myself my own grades. And when I pass a primary school, then I can buy a high school. When I bought my own high school, then I can buy a university, my own university. That's what Mr. Trump did, wasn't it? Trump University. And anyway, once I buy my own university, I can spend all day playing computer games and still give myself an honorary degree, first class, because I own the university. So I can play computer games all day. No one can stop me. He thought that was a very good wish. The next kid, there's 2 more kids left yet. The next child said, if I had a wish, I would wish for 3 wishes. That's a wish. My first wish, I'll have the computer game shop. Second wish, I'll have $108 billion. My third wish, I'll have 3 more wishes. That way I can go on forever. Infinity of wishes. The last child just looked and said, if I had a wish, I would wish that I never needed any more wishes ever again. And that's the best explanation which everybody can understand for being an arahat. Never needed any wishes ever again. The end of wanting, end of craving. And I love that story because below that many people aspire for power. That whatever I want, I can get. Below that is they want wealth. They really think that if they have enough funds, they could have power, get what they want. And it also explained to me why there's many people in this world who are multi-wealthy, and then they join politics. Because even wealth doesn't give you that power to get what you want. And you want to have control over others, being a president or prime minister or something. And more than that, of either of those, is being so at peace. You never needed a wish ever again. And that's a wonderful definition of being enlightened. Do you agree? Give it a try. Prove it. Do you want to be enlightened? Thank you for not answering the trick questions. If you want to have no wanting, because you see the problem there, so you let go. Renounce. Stop attaching. Stop wanting. And then there's a hope. And there's a hope for me too. So the hour is just about up now. So thank you all for listening. And those of you who want to have it explained in Sinhalese, have you got all of that, Venerable Dhammita? And you know, one of the reasons why I determined to tell stories and anecdotes like that today, because they're easy to remember and they're much easier to translate, and you don't have to worry you've missed anything. So that's also my little gift for Venerable Dhammita this morning. So thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.